They say this mountain man butchered his fat wife and son. But this obese girl found the truth. They say that mountain man butchered his fat wife and son. The words rolled like poison across the dusty main street of Silverwood, Montana. Men at the saloon repeated them over whiskey. Women whispered them over laundry lines. Children dared each other to point at the dark ridge of Black Bear Mountain and shout his name. Jacob Stone, the butcher on the mountain. 6 years earlier, he'd been a respected hunter with a plump, laughing wife named Margaret and a round-cheeked little boy named Thomas. Now, folks claimed he'd gone mad, hacked them to pieces, and vanished into the pines with blood still on his hands. No one questioned the story, not when it came from Sheriff Bill Carter himself. On this cold autumn morning, however, Silverwood had a different spectacle to gossip over. The judge's daughter was going to hang. Emma Watson stood on the rough wooden platform in the center of town, wrists bound, the gallows rope dangling inches from her dark hair. At 22, she was soft-bodied and visibly overweight, her dress straining at the seams, cheeks flushed with equal parts shame and terror. Below, the crowd muttered. "That's the one who poisoned her own father," someone said. "Greedy fat thing," another spat. "Wanted his money, they say." Emma squeezed her eyes shut. The accusations burned worse than the rope biting her wrists. Her father, Judge John Watson, had been the only person who ever told her she was enough, that her size didn't make her unworthy of kindness. And now he was dead, and the man who'd ordered it done was the same one leading her execution, Sheriff Bill Carter. He stood at the edge of the platform, smug beneath his badge and clean-shaven jaw, voice carrying easily over the square. "Justice," he announced, "is blind, even when the accused is the daughter of a judge. Emma Watson has confessed to poisoning her father to inherit his estate." "That's a lie," Emma croaked, but her voice shook too much to carry. Bill smiled coldly. "Any last words, girl?" Emma searched the faces below for anyone at all, who might believe her. But all she saw was disgust, pity, curiosity, not a single soul willing to take a step forward. Her throat tightened. "I didn't kill my father," she whispered. "I loved him." The townsfolk shifted, unimpressed. High above them, Black Bear Mountain loomed, its black pines knifing into the sky. Somewhere up there, they said, a monster lived, a butcher who'd killed his own plump wife and little boy. If you're listening to this, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you hearing Emma's story from right now? Because the next moment changed everything. A thunderous boom split the air. The back wall of the town jail, just beyond the gallows, exploded outward in a storm of smoke, splintered wood, and flying dust. People screamed, stumbling backward. Through the haze stepped a massive figure in a battered coat, axe strapped to his back, rifle in his hands, gray eyes hard as stone. Jacob Stone, the mountain butcher himself. He looked straight at Emma and shouted, voice like a gunshot, "Come with me if you want to live." Gunpowder still hung thick in the air when Emma felt a pair of powerful hands break the ropes binding her wrists. Jacob Stone didn't speak, not at first. He simply sliced through the knots with a hunting knife so sharp it glinted blue in the morning light, then jerked her toward the shattered alley behind the gallows. Her legs nearly collapsed beneath her weight and exhaustion. "Wait, why are you helping me?" she gasped, stumbling. Jacob didn't slow. "Move." But people say you're the butcher?" His voice was ice. "Yes, I've heard." They burst into the alley just as gunshots cracked behind them. Bill Carter's voice split the chaos. "Stop them! Shoot on sight!" Emma flinched. Jacob didn't. He shoved her behind a row of rain barrels, firing 2 shots so fast she didn't even see him aim. A deputy screamed and fell. The others hesitated, suddenly remembering all the stories they'd told about the monster on the mountain and how none of them wanted to meet him in a dark forest. "Why are they shooting at me?" Emma cried, tears streaking her cheeks. Jacob grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were sharp, but not cruel. "Because Carter wants you dead before someone listens to you." "Listens to what?" she whispered. "To the truth." The words rattled through her so violently she almost forgot her fear. Jacob pulled her to her feet. "Mount up." "Mount what?" He whistled, one sharp, commanding note. A dark stallion thundered from behind the barn, reins dragging, breath steaming in the cold. Emma stared. "How did you—" "No time." Jacob hauled her onto the saddle in front of him. She winced as her weight settled awkwardly, but Jacob didn't flinch. He wrapped one arm around her waist, grabbed the reins with the other, and snapped them hard. The horse bolted. Behind them, gunfire erupted again. Bullets tore through fence posts. A lantern shattered in a burst of flame. The townspeople scattered in panic as Jacob steered the horse toward the northern ridge. Emma clung to him, heart pounding. "Please tell me what's happening. Why did you come for me? You don't even know me." Jacob's jaw clenched. "I know Carter. I know what he's capable of. But my father, people think I killed him." "You didn't." Jacob's voice didn't waver. John Watson was the only man in Silverwood who wasn't afraid to challenge the sheriff. Carter had him murdered and planted poison in his study to blame you. Emma felt the world tilt. How do you know that?" "Because he did the same to me." Emma froze in Jacob's arms. "What?" 6 years of silence, of hatred carved into bone, finally surfaced in Jacob's tone. "My wife, my boy. Carter wanted my land. He sent men to kill them, then blamed me." His voice roughened. "Told the entire town I butchered them." Emma's breath hitched. "Jacob, I'm so sorry." The mountains swallowed them as the horse climbed the narrow trail. Wind whipped Emma's hair, the cold biting through her dress. But Jacob's presence behind her felt steady, solid, like nothing could topple him. When they finally reached a ridge high above the town, Jacob stopped the horse at a lookout point. Silverwood lay far below, torches flickering as Carter's men scrambled through the street searching for them. Emma shivered. "He'll never stop hunting me." Jacob dismounted and helped her down gently. "He will." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm going to stop him." Emma stared at him, at the man she had been raised to fear, at the monster whispered about by children, at the stranger who'd blown a hole through the jail to save her life. You don't even know me," she whispered. Jacob's eyes softened just a fraction. "I know what it feels like to be innocent and hunted. That's enough." Emma wrapped her arms around herself. "But what if the townspeople are right? What if I really am worthless?" Jacob stepped closer, voice quiet but firm. "People believe what they're told, not what's true. Carter calls you a monster because he needs someone to blame." Emma swallowed hard. "And what do you call me?" Jacob hesitated. Then, "A girl who survived when others would have given up. A girl with more courage than she realizes. A girl who deserves the truth." For the first time since her father's death, Emma felt something flicker inside her, small, fragile, but real. Hope. Jacob turned toward a narrow trail leading deeper into the pines. "Come on," he said. "My cabin's another hour from here. We'll be safe there." Emma took a shaky step, then another. Behind them, the shouts from the town faded into the wind. Ahead of them, the mountain waited, wild, cold, unforgiving. But for the first time in days, Emma did not feel alone. She followed Jacob Stone into the woods, because, whatever the truth was, it was time to finally face it. The trail narrowed as Jacob guided Emma deeper into the forest, the moonlight barely reaching through the dense canopy of pines. Every breath Emma exhaled curled into white mist. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but Jacob never slowed, not until the trees thinned enough for a temporary rest. "Sit," he ordered quietly. Emma obeyed, sinking onto a fallen log. Her lungs burned, her dress torn by branches. She rubbed her wrists where the shackles had been, the skin raw and angry. Jacob crouched in front of her, pulling a small flask from his coat. "Drink." Emma hesitated. Then she took a careful sip and nearly choked as the sharp taste hit her tongue. "That's whiskey," she coughed. "It'll warm you." Jacob took the flask back, wiping her mouth with the corner of his sleeve before she could hide her face. "You're freezing." "You're not," she murmured. Jacob's expression didn't change. "Mountain cold doesn't bother me, but it'll kill you if you don't keep moving." Emma looked away, ashamed. "I'm slowing you down." "Yes," Jacob said. Then, seeing her flinch, he added, "But I expected that. It's not your fault." She looked up, surprised by the gentleness under his blunt tone. He stood, offering her a gloved hand. "Let's go." Emma took it. His palm was warm, rough, and steady. She rose with his help, and for a moment they stood close, too close, her breath mixing with his in the cold air. Jacob looked down at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes, before he turned and continued along the trail. They walked in silence for a while, branches cracking under their boots. The forest was alive with sound, howling wind, snapping twigs, distant wolves. Emma shivered. "Are wolves dangerous?" she whispered. "Yes," she gulped. "Will they hurt us?" Jacob glanced back at her. "Not while I'm here." There was no arrogance in his voice, only certainty, and Emma felt a strange sense of safety curl through her chest. As they went deeper into the mountain, the terrain grew steeper. Twice Emma slipped, and twice Jacob caught her. The second time, her ankle twisted, and she cried out softly. "What happened?" Jacob's voice sharpened. I think I stepped wrong." Jacob crouched, brushing snow from her boot. "Can you walk?" Yes, I think so." "Don't lie to me." His voice softened. "You'll get hurt worse." Emma tightened her jaw. "I'll manage." Jacob studied her stubbornness for a long moment before stepping closer. "Arms around my neck." "What?" "I'm carrying you." Emma shook her head in horror. "No, you can't. I'm too heavy. I'll hurt you." Jacob scoffed. "I carry elk twice your size." That doesn't make me feel better," she whispered. But he didn't give her a choice. He slid one arm behind her knees, the other around her back, and lifted her as though she weighed nothing at all. Emma gasped, grabbing onto his coat instinctively. "Comfortable?" he asked. "No," she muttered, face burning. Jacob's chest rumbled with something that might have been the ghost of a laugh. "You will be." He carried her through the forest, his steps unbroken, his breathing even. Emma, pressed against him, could feel his strength, not just in muscle, but in the steadiness of the man himself. After several minutes, her voice emerged, small. "Why did you really come for me, Jacob?" He didn't answer immediately. Finally, "A hunter told me what Carter planned to do with you. I couldn't let the same man who destroyed my family destroy someone else." "But you don't even know me." "I know enough." Emma lowered her gaze. "People don't usually see enough in me." Jacob's brow tightened. "People in that town don't see anything beyond their own fear and prejudice." Emma swallowed. "Do you believe I killed my father?" "No." "Why not?" Jacob shifted her weight in his arms. "Because killers don't cry themselves to sleep." Emma stiffened. "How do you—" "You were sobbing in the cell," he said simply. "I heard you before I broke in." Her cheeks warmed with embarrassment. "That's humiliating." "It's human." The trail finally began to level out. Jacob slowed and gently set Emma on her feet. She tested her ankle. It held, though sore. He nodded approvingly. "You're tougher than you think," he said. "No one's ever said that to me." "Then they've been blind." Emma felt something loosen in her chest, something she had held tight for far too long. They continued walking, but this time Jacob stayed closer, matching his pace to hers. When the wind bit through her dress, he wordlessly draped his coat over her shoulders. When she stumbled on a root, he steadied her with a hand at her back. When fear crept into her eyes at the sound of wolves, he moved between her and the darkness. Eventually, through the trees, Emma saw a faint glow. "What's that?" she whispered. "My cabin," Jacob said. "We're almost there." As they approached the clearing, the small cabin appeared, sturdy logs, thick shutters, smoke curling from the chimney. Snow blanketed the roof like icing. A lantern flickered in the window, casting warm gold across the snow. Emma's breath hitched. "It's beautiful." Jacob opened the door, letting the warm firelight spill over them. "It's safe," he said quietly. "Come in." Emma stepped inside. Her new life, her new truth, waited on the other side of the threshold. And Jacob Stone closed the door behind her, shutting out the world that had tried to kill them both. The door closed with a soft thud, sealing the storm outside. Emma stood frozen just past the threshold, breath trembling as the warmth enveloped her. The cabin glowed with firelight, amber, soft, gentle, so different from the harsh torchlight of her cell. Jacob hung his rifle by the door and removed his gloves. Snow melted from his shoulders, dripping onto the wooden floor. For a long moment he said nothing. Neither did she. Emma finally whispered, "It's warm." Jacob nodded. "The fire's been burning since morning. I thought I might need it tonight." "For me?" "For both of us." He brushed past her, heading toward the hearth. Emma exhaled slowly as she took in the room. The cabin was small but sturdy, hand-built with care, not fear. The walls were lined with shelves of dried herbs, jars of berries, and folded quilts. A heavy wooden table stood near the window. 2 chairs. One she imagined he made for Margaret, one for himself. There was a bed in the corner, large and neatly made. Emma swallowed hard as she looked away. "Sit," Jacob said from the fireplace. "You're shivering." She took a seat on the bearskin rug near the flames, stretching her hands toward the heat. Her fingers still trembled from fear, exhaustion, and maybe something else, something she wasn't ready to name. Jacob moved with quiet efficiency, removing a pot from a hook and filling it with water from a barrel. He set it on the fire. "You'll need to eat," he said. "You haven't had proper food in days." Emma tried to protest, but her stomach growled, betraying her. Jacob glanced at her, the faintest flicker of sympathy in his eyes. "I'll make stew." "You cook?" she asked softly. "I learned. Margaret was the better cook, but I managed." The mention of his wife made the air shift, heavier yet strangely tender. Emma lowered her gaze. "Jacob," she whispered, "I'm sorry I doubted you earlier." He stirred the pot with a wooden spoon. "You were scared." "That doesn't excuse it." He didn't answer, but the silence didn't feel cold. It felt like acceptance. Minutes passed, the quiet kind, where the crackle of fire says everything words can't. Emma felt the warmth seep into her bones, melting away layers of fear she didn't know she was holding. Jacob eventually approached with a warm cloth. "Let me see your wrists." Emma blinked. My wrists? They're bleeding." She offered her arms reluctantly. His hands were large, rough from years in the wild, but his touch was shockingly gentle. He dabbed at the abrasions with steady movements. Emma bit her lip when the cloth stung, and he glanced up. "Pain?" "A little," she whispered. "You endure more than most," he said quietly. Her breath caught. She didn't know what to say. Jacob wrapped strips of soft cloth around each wrist. The bandages weren't perfect, but they felt like the first kindness she had received in months. When he finished, he stood and stepped back as if to give her space. "I'll check your ankle next." "My ankle? You twisted it earlier." Emma opened her mouth to protest again, but stopped. Jacob crouched before her with surprising patience, lifting the hem of her dress just enough to examine her ankle. His touch was warm, firm, careful. "It's swollen," he said. "Not broken?" "I'm fine." "You're not, but you will be." Emma looked at him then, really looked. The fire reflected in his eyes, revealing the man beneath the legend, not a monster, not a murderer, just a lonely man carrying too much grief. The stew finished simmering, and Jacob brought her a bowl. Emma hesitated, feeling unworthy of such care. "Eat," he said. "You'll need strength." She lifted the spoon to her lips, tasting the warm broth. Her eyes widened. "It's delicious." Jacob sat in the chair beside her, close enough to share the fire's warmth, far enough to respect the unspoken space between them. "You cooked for your wife often?" Emma asked cautiously. Jacob stared into the flames. "Sometimes. She loved the smell of herbs. Thomas, too. He would sit right there," he pointed to the rug beside Emma, "and ask 1,000 questions." Emma swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "You must miss them terribly." Jacob's breath left him in a slow exhale. "I do. Every sunset, every sunrise." Emma placed her bowl aside and spoke softly. "Jacob, what happened to them wasn't your fault." His jaw tightened. "I wasn't there. If I had been—" "You were trying to protect them," she whispered. "That's what good husbands and fathers do." Jacob's gaze snapped to hers. Something raw flickered behind his eyes. No one had spoken to him like that in 6 years. The silence stretched, heavy, charged. Then he stood abruptly, as though emotions were more dangerous than any predator outside. "You should rest." Emma's heart dropped. "Where?" He nodded toward the bed. "You'll take it." Her eyes widened. "No, Jacob, I can't. That's your bed. I can sleep on the rug." "The rug is freezing. You're injured. You get the bed." "But where will you sleep?" He nodded toward the chair. "Here." "That chair is small. You'll be uncomfortable." "I've slept in worse places." His voice softened slightly. "The bed is yours tonight. No arguments." Emma looked at the blankets, at the soft pillows, at the place where his family once slept. "I don't want to replace Margaret." Jacob's eyes softened for the first time. "You're not." The room felt too small for the emotions swelling inside both of them. Jacob turned away, as though afraid to reveal more. "Sleep, Emma. I'll keep watch." Emma stood slowly. Her ankle throbbed, but warmth, unexpected warmth, held her upright. She walked to the bed, slipping beneath the covers. They smelled faintly of cedar, pine, and something that belonged only to him. She watched Jacob settle into the chair, rifle across his lap, his silhouette framed by firelight. Her breath slowed. Peace, foreign, fragile, wrapped around her like a blanket. "Jacob," she whispered. He looked over his shoulder. "Thank you for saving me." His voice was soft but unwavering. "Sleep, Emma. You're safe here." And for the first time since her father died, she believed it. She closed her eyes. Inside the cabin, two wounded souls lay in the quiet glow of a single fire, still strangers in many ways, yet already bound by something deeper than either dared acknowledge. Outside, the mountain howled. Inside, warmth began to grow. Emma awoke to the soft crackle of the fire and the muted howl of wind brushing against the shutters. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The warmth, the quiet, the sense of safety. Then she saw Jacob sitting in the chair near the door, rifle across his lap, chin dipped forward in sleep. He looked different when he slept, less carved from stone, less burdened by ghosts, peaceful, almost gentle. Carefully, Emma sat up. The bed protested softly under her weight, but Jacob didn't stir. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and stepped quietly toward him. He jerked awake instantly, eyes snapping open, hand tightening on his rifle. Emma froze. "It's just me." Jacob relaxed, though tension still coiled in his posture. "You should be resting." "I slept most of the night." "You needed it." Emma hesitated. "So did you?" Jacob said nothing. She sat across from him on the rug. "Jacob, you stayed awake all night for me?" His jaw clenched. "If Carter sends men up this way, they'll come before dawn. I wasn't going to let them take you." Emma's chest tightened, full of emotions she wasn't ready to name. "Thank you." Jacob shifted his gaze to the fire. "You don't need to thank me." But she did. He stood and poured her a cup of herbal tea. "Drink this. It'll calm your nerves." Emma took the cup carefully. The warmth seeped into her fingers. "Jacob, I need to ask you something." He looked at her, guarded. "What?" Emma swallowed. "People in the town. They said you butchered your wife." Jacob's shoulders stiffened, just a flicker, but enough. Emma continued softly, "I know now it's a lie. I want to hear it from you." For a long, suffocating moment, Jacob didn't speak. The fire crackled. Wind pressed against the cabin walls. Finally, Jacob sat across from her, elbows braced on his knees. "I came home early that morning," he said quietly. "Margaret was in the kitchen. Thomas was in her arms." His voice tightened. They were already gone. Emma covered her mouth, tears welling. "She tried to protect him," Jacob whispered. "I could tell by how she held him." He stared into the fire, eyes burning with old pain. "They weren't just killed, Emma. They were slaughtered, left like an animal's warning." Emma felt her heart splinter. "Jacob, I buried them myself," he continued, "and the next day Carter told the town I did it." He laughed, bitter and hollow. "Everyone believed him." "Because they were afraid of you," Emma whispered. "Because it was easier," Jacob corrected. "People always choose the simplest answer, even when it's wrong." Emma wiped her eyes. "I know how that feels." Jacob looked at her then, really looked, his gaze softening. "Yes, you do?" She nodded. Bill Carter ruined both our lives." "No," Jacob said, "not yet, but he'll try." Emma's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Jacob stood, walked to the table, opened a drawer. He pulled out a worn map, edges frayed, ink faded. "Carter wants the mountain." Emma blinked. "The mountain?" Jacob spread the map across the table. "There's gold buried somewhere along Black Bear Ridge. Carter's been searching for years. My land sits on the only access trail. When I wouldn't sell, he killed my family." Emma stared. "So it wasn't just greed for your land? It was greed for what lies beneath it." Emma clenched her fists. "And he killed my father because he discovered Carter knew." Jacob nodded. "John Watson was too honest for his own good." Emma's voice trembled. "He was a good man." Jacob softened. "He raised a good daughter." Emma looked down, flushing. I don't know if that's true." "It is." Silence swelled between them, warm, fragile, meaningful. But peace never stayed long on Black Bear Mountain, not with danger circling. A sudden knock, sharp, heavy, rattled the door. Emma flinched, nearly spilling her tea. Jacob moved silently, lifting his rifle. He held a finger to his lips, and Emma's heart hammered in her chest. Another knock. "Jacob Stone, open up!" Emma froze. She recognized that voice. Sheriff Bill Carter. Jacob's jaw set like iron, a storm gathering behind his eyes. He whispered, almost inaudible, "Get behind the cabinet, now!" Emma hurried, hiding in the narrow space between the wall and a large cupboard. Her breath came fast and shallow. Jacob opened the door. Cold air swept inside like a blade. Bill Carter stood on the porch, flanked by 2 deputies. Snow covered their coats. Their expressions were tense, not brave, but afraid. "Morning, Stone," Bill said, smirking. "We're here for the girl." Jacob leaned casually against the doorframe, rifle in hand. "I don't have anyone here." Bill chuckled. "Don't insult my intelligence. I know she escaped last night. And I know exactly what kind of man you are. You took her, didn't you?" Jacob's voice was calm, deadly calm. "If I had her, Carter, I wouldn't hand her over." Bill's smile faded. "She's a fugitive, Jacob, guilty of murder." "She didn't kill her father?" Bill's eyes narrowed. "Careful, you're already a wanted man." "By you," Jacob said, "not by the law." Bill stepped closer, breath fogging in the cold. "Listen here, Stone. That girl is worth more to me alive than dead. You let me take her, and maybe I'll forget you pulled that little stunt in town last night." Jacob didn't move. "No." Bill's smile turned cruel. "Then I'll drag her out myself." Jacob raised the rifle, not aimed, just lifted. "Try." A tense silence. Emma held her breath, watching through a crack in the cupboard. Bill stepped back slowly. "Fine, Stone. Stay up here playing house with your pig-faced girlfriend. But when this mountain thaws, I'll come back with 20 men, and I'll burn this cabin to the ground." Jacob didn't react, didn't blink. Bill spat on the snow and signaled his men. "Let's go. For now." The moment they disappeared into the trees, Jacob shut the door and bolted it. Emma emerged, shaking. He called me." "Emma." Jacob's voice was firm, quiet. "Look at me." She did. Jacob stepped closer, not touching her, but grounding her with his presence. "Bill Carter doesn't get to tell you who you are. He never will." Emma's lip trembled. "He'll come back." "Yes," Jacob said, "which means we don't have much time." "For what?" His eyes hardened with purpose and something fiercely protective. "To end this, once and for all." Emma swallowed. "What do we need to do?" Jacob looked at her, and in that moment she realized something. He wasn't fighting only for revenge anymore. He was fighting for her. "First," he said, "you need to know everything. The truth, the danger, the map, Carter's plans, my past." "And mine," Emma whispered. Jacob nodded. "Then we plan. Together." Emma drew in a steadying breath. "I'm not leaving you, Jacob." He met her gaze, deep, unyielding, grateful. "I know." Outside the storm raged. Inside a different storm was gathering. But this time they wouldn't face it alone. For 2 days the mountain crouched under an iron sky, the air heavy with the promise of violence. Jacob sharpened blades, restocked ammunition, checked every window latch twice. Emma helped where she could, sorting herbs for wounds, filling water jugs, setting aside blankets. But Jacob noticed the tremor in her hands. "You don't have to fight," Jacob said quietly as he inspected the rifle. Emma straightened. "I won't hide while you risk your life." He paused. "Emma, Carter isn't coming to arrest us. He's coming to kill us." "I know." She looked him in the eye. "And I'm still not hiding." A muscle twitched in Jacob's jaw, not frustration, but something closer to pride. "He'll come at dawn," Jacob murmured. "Most men attack at dawn. It makes them feel brave." Emma exhaled slowly. "What do we do?" "We survive," Jacob answered. Before she could respond, a faint tremor rolled through the cabin floorboards. Then another. Then the unmistakable crunch of many boots in fresh snow. Emma's blood turned to ice. "They're here," Jacob said. He blew out the lanterns, plunging the cabin into shadow, leaving only the faint flicker of the dying fire. He moved like a predator, silent, controlled, as he took his position by the window. Emma crouched behind the heavy table, hands pressed to her chest. Voices rose outside. "There! Smoke from the chimney! Surround the damn place!" Jacob recognized Bill Carter's bark instantly. "You think you can hide her forever, Stone? You think you can hide from me?" Jacob rested the rifle on the window ledge. "Stay behind me," he murmured. Emma nodded, breath shallow. The first bullet smashed through the window. Emma screamed, covering her head. Jacob didn't flinch. He fired back, a single clean shot. A man outside cried out and crashed into the snow. Gunfire erupted from every direction, ripping into the cabin walls. Splinters flew. The air turned thick with smoke and cold air and terror. "Jacob," Emma cried. "Stay low," he commanded. Another volley of bullets shredded the shutters. Jacob rolled to the opposite wall, firing again. Outside, men shouted in panic. They hadn't expected the mountain man to fight like a cornered wolf. But Emma knew this wasn't just survival. This was Jacob defending the only person left in his life. Carter's voice cut through the chaos. "Burn him out?" Emma's heart lurched. "Jacob, they're going to—" "I know," he said grimly. "We need to move." He grabbed her wrist, not roughly but urgently, and pulled her toward the back door. Then flames licked under the front window. Someone had thrown a torch into the wall. "Jacob, we're trapped." "No," he said, eyes fierce. "There's a way. Trust me." He shoved open the back door and froze. Bill Carter stood there, alone, gun raised. "Going somewhere?" Bill sneered. Emma's breath broke in her throat. Jacob moved in front of her instinctively, body a shield. "This ends now, Carter." "Oh, I agree," Bill said, smile widening. "But only one of us walks away." Jacob lifted his rifle, but Bill's gun was already aimed at his heart. Then Emma stepped forward. "Stop!" Both men froze. Emma moved between them before Jacob could pull her back. Her voice shook, but she stood tall. "Bill Carter," she said, "I'm not running from you anymore." Bill laughed. You think I won't shoot you, girl?" "You killed my father," Emma said louder now. "You framed me. You destroyed Jacob's family, and you call us monsters?" Bill's smirk faltered. "You're nothing but a coward," she said, "and I'm not afraid of you." "Emma, get back," Jacob growled. But she didn't. Bill's grip tightened on the trigger. "You think you're brave," he hissed. "You're just a fat—" The gunshot cracked like thunder. Emma flinched, but didn't fall. Bill did. He staggered backward, staring at the blood blooming on his coat. A second shot echoed from the ridge above. Jacob spun, shocked. Up on the snowy hill stood Henry, the old witness, rifle smoking, breath ragged. "You won't hurt them any more," Henry wheezed. Bill collapsed into the snow, eyes wide with disbelief. The deputies, hearing the shot, scattered into the forest, running from the ghost of their fallen leader and from the mountain man who had survived hell. Silence fell. Emma's knees buckled, and Jacob caught her before she hit the ground. "It's over," he whispered, holding her tightly. "Emma, it's over." She sobbed into his chest, not from fear, but from overwhelming relief. Jacob pressed his forehead against hers. "You were brave, braver than I have ever been." She clung to him. "I was only brave because you were with me." He wrapped both arms around her, pulling her fully against him. Outside, the fire in the front of the cabin burned out in the snow. Inside, another fire, older, deeper, stronger, was just beginning. Snow fell in slow, drifting flakes as Henry limped down from the ridge, his breath shallow, but determined. Jacob supported the old man with one arm while steadying Emma with the other. The danger had passed, but the fear still clung to her like cold air in her lungs. Inside the cabin, the fire had died to embers. Jacob rebuilt it carefully, stacking logs with steady hands, hands Emma had watched Breakstone lift her weight without effort, fire rifles without trembling. Now those same hands moved gently, almost delicately, as though the flames might startle if he weren't careful. Henry sat wrapped in a blanket, sipping the tea Emma prepared. "I've been waiting 6 years to do that," the old man muttered, voice cracking. 6 years since Carter killed your family, Jacob." Jacob set a hand on Henry's shoulder, the closest thing to affection Emma had ever seen him offer another person. "You did more than anyone ever dared. Thank you." Henry waved him off weakly. "Just tell the truth now. Let the law handle the rest." "The law failed us," Jacob answered. "You didn't." Henry nodded once before exhaustion claimed him. He drifted into sleep beside the fire. Emma folded the blanket around the old man's shoulders, then turned slowly, almost shyly, to Jacob. His silhouette stood dark and solid against the firelight, shoulders broad, hair still wet from melted snow. There was soot across his cheekbone and a tear in his coat. But his eyes, those cold steel blue eyes, were softer than she had ever seen. "Are you hurt?" Emma whispered. "Mostly grazes." He paused. "And you?" Emma hesitated. "Shaken, but alive." Jacob stepped closer. "You shouldn't have stood between us." "I had to," she said, breath trembling. "I couldn't let him kill you, not after everything you've been through, not after you saved me." Jacob's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in the overwhelming weight of feeling he didn't know how to wield. He lifted a hand, stopping just short of touching her cheek. "You could have died," he whispered. "You could have too," she whispered back. His hand finally cupped her cheek. Her eyes fluttered closed at the warmth. Jacob swallowed, his voice low and raw. "You were brave," he said. "You taught me how," she answered. He shook his head. No, Emma, you were always brave. You just needed someone who could see it. Emma's breath hitched, her chest tightening in a way that felt like both fear and hope. Jacob lowered his forehead to hers. "You're safe here," he murmured. Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks. "It finally feels that way." He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a slow, steady embrace, one that wasn't born of desperation or battle, but something deeper, something fragile, something new. Emma rested her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong, unwavering, as if it belonged to the mountain itself. Outside, the world lay blanketed in snow. Inside, warmth, true warmth, finally settled. The danger wasn't gone. The future wasn't certain. But for the first time in both their lives, hope had room to breathe. Thank you for walking with Emma and Jacob through every storm, every fear, every breath of hope that finally broke through the darkness. Stories like theirs remind us that even the most wounded hearts can find their way back to the light. Sometimes with help, sometimes with love, sometimes simply by refusing to give up. Every time you comment, every time you share where you're listening from, it reminds me that stories connect us across miles, mountains, oceans. So tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And if you still believe in second chances, the next story is already waiting for you.